Beautiful day today, and I've got my hands on an R-Design Volvo. The 2018 Volvo XC90 T6 R-Design. The first time I saw one of these things, it was parked on the street behind another car. I couldn't see the Volvo grille, and I thought I was looking at a redesigned BMW X5. And you can see how I could make that mistake. It's got these big wheels, low profile tires, large wide fenders up front, wide fenders in the rear. It looks aggressive and beautiful. It could easily be an AMG Mercedes SUV. It's a really nice looking vehicle. The XC90 has a unibody chassis like a car, not a body on frame chassis like a truck. So it's made for handling, safety, and comfort, not heavy duty construction use. It has a front to rear all-wheel drive train like an economy car, not a rear to front all-wheel drive train like a performance vehicle. Front wheel drive cars are cheaper to make, they're cheaper to buy. The upside is good gas mileage. The downside is under heavy acceleration, because the engine is turned sideways, one of the wheels may receive more power than the other, and that might cause the steering wheel to turn itself. This is called torque steer, which is a phenomenon that most people don't necessarily feel, but it can become problematic at high speeds, which is why performance cars and race cars are rear-wheel drive. Rear-wheel drive cars are expensive to make, expensive to buy. They're not as good on gas, but they are the performance standard. This has a fully independent suspension like a luxury car, not a live axle like a pickup truck, so it's geared towards handling and passenger comfort rather than construction use. This thing also has the more desirable and more expensive double wishbone front suspension as opposed to the McPherson strut type, so it should handle better. This XC90 also has the $1,800 air ride suspension, so it has rubber bags that fill with air rather than metal springs. Upside to a fully independent suspension is better ride quality, better handling. The upside to an air ride suspension is you can raise and lower the height of the vehicle, determine how soft of a ride you want. The downside to an air ride suspension is this is more complicated than a standard suspension, so when it breaks, it can be more expensive to repair. Cars either have drum brakes or disc brakes. Drum brakes last a long time. They don't perform as well as disc brakes. The Volvo has disc brakes all around for better stopping power, better safety. These wheels are 22 inches with low profile tires. These wheels are geared towards handling and looks, not passenger comfort or off-road use. These tires cost about $400 per tire to replace. One thing I don't like about this vehicle is the badge. It's called the T6, which when I originally saw it made me think this was a turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, but it doesn't have a 6-cylinder engine. It has a small 4-cylinder engine like an economy car. Some people might find this badge disingenuous because when you name a vehicle, numbers like 4, 6, and 8 have mechanical implications. This is especially confusing because Volvo sold a Volvo XC90 with a 6-cylinder engine and an 8-cylinder engine in the past. I think this thing should be called the ST4. I think the hybrid version should be called the STH, and I think a diesel version should be called the STD, or maybe they just shouldn't make a diesel version. This thing has a tiny little 2-liter 4-cylinder engine like you would find in a Toyota Corolla, but it has a supercharger and a turbocharger, which means it generates 316 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, which is a little bit more than a Honda Accord. Quick background, the way an engine works, it sucks air in, there are explosions or combustions, it generates power, and then it blows air out. The more air an engine can suck in, the more power it can generate. A turbocharger is like a metal hairdryer that forces more air into the engine. A supercharger works differently but does the same thing. It forces air into an engine. The upside to a turbocharger and a supercharger, they help an engine generate way more power than they would otherwise be able to. They make a car fun and fast to drive. The downside to a turbo and a supercharger, some people believe that forced induction systems lead to increased engine wear, and the increased complexity can also lead to more maintenance, more expensive maintenance, and complicated repairs down the road, especially if the turbocharger or the supercharger fails. Of course, Volvo has a reputation for putting small engines into big vehicles. They've also been turbocharging their vehicles for a long period of time, but only time will tell how reliable these engines end up being. Still, it's really cool for an engine to have a turbocharger and a supercharger. Let's talk about maintenance and repairs. This thing is 3 years old. It's had its front windshield replaced 2 times, so it's on its 3rd windshield. The windshield looks beautiful, it just doesn't seem to be great at coping with wind and rock chips, which is kind of its job. Rear brakes were replaced before this vehicle hit 20,000 miles, which is odd when you think of the way brakes work. When you hit the brakes in your car, all of the weight of your vehicle shifts to the front. So your front brakes end up doing 70% of the work. It's rare to have to replace rear brakes before replacing the front brakes. Typically, you'll replace the front brakes twice before you replace the rear brakes. Not sure if it was a manufacturer defect, a crooked dealer, or if the rear brakes of a Volvo XC90 just happened to wear out way faster than the fronts. At 25,000 miles, it now needs front brakes. Leave a comment below, let me know, are you constantly replacing windshields and brakes in your XC90 if you own one of these vehicles? It's also had some issues with its air ride suspension, and it's had its center control unit reset a couple of times. This thing has 15.8 cubic feet of storage space behind its third row seats, 41.8 cubic feet with its third row seats folded down, and 85.7 cubic feet of storage with these seats folded down. Plus the trunk opens and closes itself because we all know how hard it is to do this motion with your arm, especially with your puny little arms. You can access the third row seats by pulling this handle. The third row seats are actually comfortable enough for an adult to sit in for long journeys. I like the cup holders, the vents, and the storage space. Second row seats are incredibly comfortable. It has this cute little armrest with an integrated cup holder and controls for its 4-zone climate control. The interior is one of the nicest I've seen. The buttons and switches have a very high quality feel to them, as do these sliding storage doors. The glove box is cavernous. It's a really nice place to spend time. These are some of the most comfortable seats I have sat on. They're bolstered, they're endlessly adjustable, they're very supportive. It kind of feels like you're sitting in a big baby seat. It has a central control unit that looks like a tablet and a digital gauge cluster. It looks good, there's very little lag. I know this is a trend these days, but I'm not a huge fan of digital screens. I prefer analog gauges because I think they look better, they age better, and they're cheaper to fix. When the radio in my 20-year-old Toyota 4Runner starts to get old, I can replace it with a new Pioneer or a Sony head unit. When this center control unit gets old, it might be hard to replace because it doesn't look like it's a standard size. It looks like it's a custom size made for Volvo. So when this thing starts to look old, the whole car will feel old, and that's problematic because Volvo drivers like to keep their cars for long periods of time. Plus, you need this screen to control the heat, the AC, and the heated seats. This Volvo has the optional $3,200 Bowers & Wilkins sound system. It's got 19 speakers, 1,400 watts, so you Volvo drivers can blast your NPR at full volume. Quiet and comfortable in here. You can still hear the engine, and there is some road noise, possibly due to those low profile tires and big wheels. The suspension is really good at absorbing bumps, and at the same time you don't feel like you're in a big wallowy old Cadillac or a big SUV, which is impressive considering the air suspension. It's really nice in here. This thing is fun to drive in dynamic mode. 0 to 60, 6.1 seconds, top speed 130 miles an hour. What I feel is when you put it into dynamic mode, it feels quick to accelerate until you reach 60 or 70 miles an hour, at which point it seems to run out of energy. That's just characteristic of a small engine in a big vehicle or a small turbocharged engine. On the topic of gas mileage, this thing is listed by the EPA at getting 20 city, 27 miles per gallon on the highway, but I'm getting 18 miles per gallon. Online, people have listed, owners have listed that they're getting anywhere from 14 miles per gallon to 19 miles per gallon, which is fine for a big SUV until you consider that the 2010 Volvo XC90 with a big V8 engine was getting 18 miles per gallon in real world driving. So what is the point of having a tiny little 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that's supposed to give you better gas mileage if you're not actually getting better gas mileage in real life? Bring back the V8. I want the V8. The old V8 engine in the old XC90 was made by Yamaha. It's the same engine found in the Noble M600 supercar, and it generated something like 650 horsepower when it was turbocharged in that supercar. I mean, can you imagine how awesome this thing would be if it had a V8 engine and a turbocharger and a supercharger? This thing is super safe. It's got 9 airbags, 5-star front and side crash test rating. It's got a semi-autonomous driving mode, so you can hit a button, it'll drive itself, but I have had it veer out of the lane that I was in. I don't trust it 100%, and also you have to keep your hands on the wheel and focus on what you're doing. So if I don't trust it and I have to keep my hands on the wheel and focus on driving, then I'd prefer to just drive the car myself. This seems like a nice feature to talk about, but I don't know if I would actually get much use out of it. The good, interesting engine, killer suspension, beautiful interior, good looks outside, safe as can be, seat 7, The bad: performance is lacking, road noise, windshield, brakes seem to wear out prematurely. I don't like the badge, and the integrated electronics may lead to expensive repairs down the road. How would I improve it? Reinforce the windshield, make the brakes last longer, big V8 engine, manual transmission, analog gauges, buttons and switches to control important functions rather than having a centralized unit. Get rid of the self-driving. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you love cars. Now we'll see you next time.